This is the 141st episode of CloudFocus Weekly for the last week of June 2013. This episode is titled Mastering Meetings. CloudFocus Weekly is sponsored by Arkus, your cloud computing experts. I'm your host, Jason Atwood, and joining me, or should I say meeting with me, for the 141st time, co-host Justin Edelstein. Justin, how you doing?
I like your voice inflections. You go way up, and then you come down. Then you go way up, and then you come down. You do. This is the 141st episode. CloudFocus Weekly.
It's my professional broadcasting. Oh wait, no, I actually was a business major.
Must be your voice and diction class that you took.
I didn't go to college and learn to.
You didn't go to college? What?
And to learn to speak on a
microphone.
On a microphone. No, I did not. So we have a very special episode of CloudFocus Weekly today.
We need sound effects when you say that, like music under it. A very special episode of CloudFocus Weekly. So this will be our
third very special episode. We did our one on support.
Correct.
We did our one on GTD, which is still
it's hot in the streets.
It's very, very popular. Which we have to recap that at some point. We have to do something like a getting.
Do you need a weekly review?
Ooh, a weekly review
one. Weekly
would be
review
very
one.
Good.
I would love that.
That is deep.
I want to listen to that one.
Justin wants to listen to me talk about.
I don't
weekly
even
review.
want to do it. I just want to listen to that one.
I
get David Allen to
all
call
the time.
in.
You can talk to me whenever you want. But this one came about. We're doing meetings. So we're going to talk about meetings.
We're going to meet
to
talk about a meeting.
Yes, please.
To talk about a meeting.
Please don't turn it off right now.
They're like, no, I go to meetings all the time. I know how they work.
Right. So this actually came about when I proposed this weeks or maybe months ago. I was listening to another podcast, big fan of Back to Work with Merlin Mann. And
were you listening to the first half hour or the second half hour?
No, second hour. The first half hour.
Oh my
gosh. Nothing. Anyway, and he did a little riff on meetings, and I thought, and then he posted an old video of him talking to. He was actually at Twitter, talking to them about meetings.
There's nothing better than a Merlin riff.
There's nothing better than a Merlin. The thing that's better than a Merlin riff is a Merlin well thought out presentation.
That's true too.
Because he's good, but the riffing gets too riffing, and I like it when he just digs into something. So I figured. We actually, we do a lot of meetings. B, we came from an organization that had, I think, some of the biggest problems that I've ever met in meetings. And now we've created an organization that we kind of have taken a lot of the lessons that we've learned from that other organization that should not be named and other organizations that we worked at and sort of made them better. I feel like we've actually done a lot with making the process of meetings. And then to cap it, this week I said I'm going to write a blog post for next week, and I kind of went through and I put my thoughts together on the stuff that I think make meetings really good and the stuff that make meetings really bad and what to avoid. So I thought we'd kind of dig in and get meaningful. Oh, so bad.
So I'm not even going to say it's so bad it's good. It's just bad.
So here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk a lot about it, but top level items. We're going to talk about problems. We're going to talk about who to invite. We're going to talk about where to schedule. We're going to talk about how to manage them, best practices, tips and tricks. We're going to go deep. But I want to start with you.
Me.
Give me what you say, and it's probably short, and then kick it back to me. Give me what you say.
I love how you prepare me for these things. And by prepare, I mean...
You've been prepared for this for 2 weeks.
Ask me random questions.
What would you say are the biggest problems with meetings currently? Give me not the solutions. We're going to talk about solutions at the end. You have to listen to the whole thing. But what do you think the biggest problems are with meetings today?
Sure. So, in my opinion, the biggest problems come when people aren't sure of why they're even meeting. So, meetings just have a meeting with no agenda, no clear owner or leader of the meeting. Been in quite a few meetings where, you're just invited and it's like you're just there and it's like you want to raise your hand and say kind of, excuse me, why am I here? So that's a result of some of the problems in, scheduling, some of the problems in who to have at the meeting, some of the how to start a meeting off and kick off a meeting properly. A lot of issues with people that just don't really know what to do with the time, so they just throw out like a meeting request. I also have a problem with people who just throw out meeting requests and don't ask me if I'm actually available, and don't make me like required or optional or anything of that nature. Just say invite. Don't check to see if I'm available. If you're in my organization, you can see my free busy. You can see if I'm available.
So
those are some of my bugaboos.
So I mean, I'm gonna go a little bit big picture, big higher up. I think meetings are sort of the next wave of insidious cancer to our corporations and to our organizations and to the workday life. Email was the first insidious cancer, right? And I think we've sort of learned through tools and whatever. And like we talk about email, and maybe we'll do it. Maybe that's one of our podcasts is a big thing on email. Email is something, and I say this all the time. Email is something you can't control. Meaning, I can send you 100 emails, and you can't stop me. So it's kind of out of your control. Like mail, even you can either go to the mailbox or not go to the mailbox. With email, it's kind of like you don't have a choice. You're inundated, and so meetings have become that. People can basically throw things on your calendar. They can take your time without paying for it, without asking for it, without having any, value of what you're doing in your life. They can take your time and they can fill it up. And in a world where, we're all concerned about productivity and all that, they can take as much as they want. And even when you're saying, oh, they don't look to see if I'm busy or not, even looking at someone's calendar and seeing they're booked for 8 hours of the day and then putting it on the 9th hour, even that.
I knew lots of people at the old organization back in the day where that was their goal. The goal was to fill the day with meetings because that was work.
And I want to say that that's sort of where I come to this, is that my, where I came to everything is that a meeting is not work. It is not the actual doing of anything. And so if you start with that to say, you know what? Unless your job is to do nothing but do meetings, which I don't think a lot of the people who listen to this podcast are like, their job isn't to sit and just be in meetings. There are people out there, right? I think government officials, like these high executives, where they're actually not doing anything. They don't open Excel other than to look at something. They don't, they don't configure anything. They don't do. It's really just a matter of listening to people and then delegating. If your job is a 99% delegation job, yeah, you probably meetings. That's what you do. You go to meetings, you listen to people, you make decisions, and you tell people other people do it. But there's very few of those people, and the rest of the people have to do the work. And so organizations slow down to these crawls because people use meetings as a way of forwarding work or as a crutch to forward work and to make things happen in the organization. And so I think that's my biggest thing, is that they, it's sort of, and this is going to be in the blog post next week, but I want meetings to be the last resort. It's the last resort for when nothing else can work. I always look for, okay, if I need a meeting, do I need a meeting, first of all? And then is there anything else I can do in the world besides this meeting? Like, can I have a quick call? Can I go talk to somebody? Can I write up a document? Can I send them an email? Can I text them? I mean, what other 5 ways could I get this information or whatever I need, without having a formal sit-down meeting?
One of the other big problems, we're hitting on problems. I mean,
let's get all the problems
there are
out.
good things with meetings too, but one of the other problems is when people will stop working because they need to meet before they can continue working. So like, oh, I did this thing. Now we have to have a meeting to all get together and talk about it. And that meeting's not scheduled for another week and a half. So the whole momentum just stops.
Right.
Because you didn't have a meeting to talk about it. I mean, there are a lot of tools out there now that allow for people to collaborate in ways that did not exist 5-10 years ago.
Right.
You don't need to necessarily meet to put a PowerPoint presentation on a projector screen. Everyone can look at it at the same time, online or
or review
whatever.
it in
Just
advance,
review it
or
in advance, be
right.
sent out in email, or be shared via Google presentation or on a chatter feed or whatever it is. You can get those things out to people without having to present it in person.
Right, and I think that's something I also want to dig into a little. Like, the problem with meetings too has become, or one of the sort of things is that 50 years ago, 30 years ago, your ability to collaborate in a non-person to person environment was almost nil. Like, you had a phone, you didn't have a fax. 30 years ago, I had a fax. Maybe 40 years ago, didn't have a fax. You basically had a phone and you had a meeting.
Yeah,
and that was it.
I think back to when I was growing up. My father worked at a large
the same one that we always talk about.
Same
by the way.
one, actually. Large institution.
We all know how you got your job.
And that's not true. Come on. You hired me. It's your fault. But I remember him traveling all over the world. He went to Chile a few times. Chile. He's been to Hong Kong. He's been to Paris, London, just every continent almost, for business. And I think to myself now, I'm like, wow, I meet with people from, this morning I had a meeting with one of our clients, a global company, and I met with...
Who shall not be named?
Well, they can be named, but I'm not going to name them. One person was in Pennsylvania, one person was in a suburb of London, and 2 people were in Pune in India. So there's 5 people at a meeting, no one's in the same place,
right?
And they're all over the globe. And
right.
I think back like 30 years ago, and I'm like, that couldn't happen.
Right. And I think
how does that even work?
And we've done this shift now from having where meetings, like, again, if you were going to meet at that kind of meeting, that would have taken weeks to coordinate.
And you wouldn't just go to Pune or fly someone to New York or Philly. You would have to do a whole big agenda around it,
right.
and be there for like a week or
right.
4 days and make a whole thing out of it instead of a quick half hour. We need to catch up. So let's catch up.
So, and that's both the good and the bad. The good news is that meetings, like when you wrote a letter, so I'll make the email analogy again. When you used to write a letter, it was hard and difficult and took a lot of time to write a letter. And then it cost money. When something becomes free and easy, then people sort of abuse it. So whereas, to schedule a meeting a long time ago, would take all that effort and cost thousands of dollars to get those same people in the room. Now it's literally free. I mean, as free as you're going to get, meaning you have a subscription to this and VoIP and all that. And people work from home.
We'll talk about tools later.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the big issues is that meetings have become very easy to do and easy to get on people's calendar. Again, 30 years ago, you couldn't get on someone else's calendar without calling somebody else and then having them put you on their calendar. Now you can send an email to somebody and it literally will block out their time. Like, it literally just blocks out their time on sometimes you have to accept it or not, but it still shows up. Like, it still sits there on the calendar. And if you're in an Outlook environment, internally, which I think is part of the problem of meetings, it will be there, and it's, I think they don't auto accept, but it already looks like you're going to go.
It puts you in that light blue,
right, or whatever the color is.
Like there's a meeting request outstanding at this time,
right? So having said that, and my first then taking from the point of you should do everything you can to avoid a meeting, because I feel that there's a great reason to have them. But you should go through every other scenario of making sure that this is the right reason to have it. What are the right reasons to have it? Well, collaboration in a place that needs to be real time with everybody from local places, from different places, right? That's a good meeting. To get communication that would take too long or difficult to get over email and other places. Okay, great to have a meeting. To level set on things, to train. I mean, training's it's like an example of a meeting. Like, okay, to train somebody, you should do that by a meeting. Telling someone to go read 20 documents is not as good as getting on a call and having someone show you something. So there's all these good reasons to have them, but I would say my first thing is just make sure that you've gone down the path of, is there really a need for this? right? And on that math, is there really a need for this? And then the second question is, who should you invite? So let's talk about who you should invite into a meeting. Like why and who, and well, we can talk a little bit about how.
I mean, in our context, we generally deal with organizations who are doing projects with us. That's what most of our meetings are. We're not a very heavy internal meeting company. Arkus.
And we have absolutely zero standing meetings.
No standing meetings internally.
No internal standing meetings.
Right. I mean, we have things that we do once a month or once every other month or once every quarter or whatever, but they're not on the calendar. They're sort of like, oh, okay, we kind of need to do this. Let's schedule it.
And I think that's one of my first sort of the tips of a thing is, while you can meet weekly or monthly or yearly or whatever, there can be a periodicity. Oof, let's cut that out in post.
I still don't think you got it. Try again.
Of your meetings. Not even going to try.
Periodicity?
That's it.
Is that the word?
Maybe.
I don't think
That's
so.
a good one if it is.
Close.
Maybe I just made it up.
Possible.
You don't have to necessarily click the repeat button. Like you can have a monthly meeting that you're supposed to meet in the first week of every month without throwing it out there onto the calendar. Because what I find is if you do that, then it allows for no flexibility. It also allows for, sort of go, oh. So it's like this podcast. So it's a great example.
Yeah.
We podcast
every week, but
right?
It's not a recurring meeting.
Not a recurring meeting
of our calendars.
What we do is we rely on our other tools to make sure that we put it on our calendar weekly. And I go in and every week I schedule it because every week it could be different. And so like for a monthly meeting, same thing. I want to make sure that, do you need to have it? It could be a monthly meeting, but you just met 2 days ago. Or you could have been a monthly meeting and you just had a great jam session or something. You're like, well, we don't need it this month. So it's on the calendar. Why do we need to have it? So I think it's one of the things is sort of, I wrote this in the blog post next week, which is really try as hard as you can not to avoid standing meetings. But so, okay, keep going on to who you should invite.
So, I mean, when we we're we do projects, right? So when we're meeting with a client, in the kickoff meeting, I always identify kind of like that single point of contact, that project manager on the other side. It might be one person, it might be two people. So I typically coordinate with that person to say, you're invited, always. You can come if you need to be there. I'd like you to be there. But I'm going to sort of rely on you to help me understand who from your end needs to be invited. So if we're talking about, rolling out Salesforce and we're going to do it for a sales team and a service team, I don't really need the service people at the meeting where I'm going to be talking about leads and converting them to opportunities. On the flip side, I don't necessarily need the salespeople there when I'm talking about case escalation rules. Now, at the end of the day, at the training, there might be some cross-contamination where, hey, salespeople, you can see the services that are being provided to your people that you're selling to, and vice versa. Service, you can see maybe the accounts and what they mean. So, make sure that the right people are at the meetings. If you're at like a crossroads, make sure a decision maker is at the meeting. Like if you're at like a trouble spot or you need a decision made, make sure that if you're going to schedule a meeting to get a decision made, if by all other means necessary, you have to get on the phone and you have to meet, or you have to go to someone's office and meet in person. Make sure the person who can make the decision is there so that they can get the information firsthand. I find that that's most effective, as opposed to, if they're not going to be there, then you can just send them an email.
Right. And I think
that's the information, right?
And definitely less is more, right? The bigger the meeting, and there's sort of a theme here, when the more people you have on the meeting, my feeling is the more you need to prepare for the meeting, meaning the more you need to detail things, right? So I have a couple examples that, and later and what sort of best practices around meetings, but so less is more, right? Making sure, because when we do training, one of the things we try to do is on a go-to WebEx conference call type training, we try to limit the number through experience to roughly around 10 people, right? Getting on with 30 to 50 people, and we've been on calls recently with big, it just gets hard to handle. The technology actually isn't very good at handling massive amounts of people on a conference call, on a WebEx, on a GoTo, unless it's one broadcasting to everybody, but not with interactivity. I mean, those chat windows turn into scrolling whatever, and the people, it's too much. So there's a point of sort of saying, I get it. You have to have a sort of a conference with 100 people. That's different. But really, the less people that are needed and the more focused they are in on what their roles and responsibilities at the meeting, the better. So really consider. I know it's easy to put people in a byline, like CCing somebody on an email, but you're literally taking an hour worth of their time. And so make sure that there's a value for them to be there, not just like, oh, because I'm CCing them. I would say, if you can say to yourself, this person could get a recap of the meeting after the meeting, which we'll talk about later, and be totally happy, then don't invite them. Then give them a recap afterwards, right? How'd that meeting go? I didn't need to be there. Great. I can get the 5-minute recap. Save me some time. So you actually brought up the next point, which I had in here, which was where to schedule from. So it's a great tip for you, everybody out there. If you're trying to schedule with multiple organizations, pick a person in the other organization as your point. You don't need to put together the best meeting request ever with everybody from 17 planets on it. Because realistically, people pay more attention to internal meeting requests than they do external meeting requests. And internal people can look at their availability, whereas external cannot. So I have found, and now do, if I need to schedule within an organization, I'll use one person as my point. I'll say, I'll throw the thing on your calendar, right, from me, so it's on ours. We're mutually locked. But then you schedule internally. So I might get on the phone and say, hey, look at your time. When's a good time? They'll say, oh, I got everybody's here. Oh, I can see everybody's good at 2 next week. Great. I'm good at 2. You send that out. Yep. I'll send one to you. So it does create a little bit of double.
Yep. I do the same thing.
Right.
They oftentimes tend to include me on theirs. So then I have it on my calendar twice, but that's okay.
That's fine. Well, that's also them just including you. So go to the place where the most people are. And I've been in triple situations, where I'll just pick one person on this side and one person this, and you internally and me internally me.
We've tried unsuccessfully, and haven't tried very often recently, to use that cloud scheduler tool that Salesforce provides.
That's right.
People just don't get it.
I wish they did.
I wish they did get it, because it's pretty useful. You can send out, here's 5 times that work for me to a bunch of other people. Pick a time, and people just don't understand.
They think they're actually requesting. They think they're going to the meeting at that point.
Yeah, they don't get it.
Yeah.
And it's actually really good.
Also, the tools inside, I think, to tell you that everybody did or did not do something, I feel like they're not very good.
They rolled that out and then kind of stopped. I think it's because they probably saw nobody was using it, but that's quite a catch-22, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a little bit.
Nobody's using it because it's not very good. It's not very good, so nobody's using it.
It's a great concept, and every time I try to arrange with a bunch of people, I try to get to, I always think, oh, I wish I had a tool. And I know there's tools on the web where, Meet Now and go to, Meet something. There's tons of little websites. At the end of the day.
I used to have this one tool, I can't remember, at my previous workplace, which was not the large one, where I could just install stuff on my machine. It was this, I forgot the name. It was I forget the name of it. Darn it. It was a tool that integrated with your Outlook that sort of published your availability
Free
out
time.
to the web.
Yep.
And then someone could, from there, you basically just sent them a little short link, like a bit.ly style link, and they would click it, and then they can request a meeting with you.
Right.
So it's like, here's my count, here's the link, just pick a time, and it will then show up on my calendar.
But even then, I think the complexities of the calendar, as if you're, if you believe that your calendar is your hard landscape, meaning that everything that's on it is a real thing, and it's not, shoulda, couldas, wouldas, it's real. You just seeing that I'm booked for 2 to 3 gives you no insight into what's actually happening. I might be booked 2 to 3 because I'm off-site. I might have a meeting in New Hampshire at 2 to 3. I also might be at my daughter's recital from 2 to 3 in Long Island City, and you're booking me to be here in New York. So
yeah, but that's a you see, I don't know if we're talking about tools and such. We are. All right. Well, we'll get to calendars in a minute, but I've learned to wrap certain meetings with
travel time.
Just a big block around it.
Yep.
So like a half hour before, half hour after. It's actually, I don't put two separate things. I put one big one that just goes through the whole thing. Like if I have a meeting from 1 to 2 that requires me to travel a half hour on each end,
you'll put another
I'll
meeting.
Put one meeting from 12:30 to 2:30.
Right.
That just says travel.
Yeah, I'll do. If I know that that's a problem, and I think the people are going to I will put 2 half-hour meetings on either side.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, we do the same
way.
thing. Just.
But the point is, like, it's also. I feel like it's still, even if you could see my availability, you still can't tell the context of those meetings or where I'm going to be at those times.
Right.
And so, I think, again, doing over email, saying, listen, what are some times? And here's a tip. Everybody knows this, but I'm going to throw it out there. You don't start off with what are your times. If you're starting the conversation, start with your times, because then it cuts one email down, right? You say, I'm available at all Monday afternoon and Tuesday afternoon. You give them the swaths, and then that'll cut down, because then they'll say, I can do 3.
It's also a good sales tip for those salespeople out there that are listening. That's a much, if your goal is to secure a meeting, you say, I'm going to be available at this time on this date. Can you meet then?
Right.
As opposed to saying, when would you like to meet? Because then it's like,
never.
You're not really asking. Yeah, never. No.
I know. I always give 2 swaths. So I'll either 3 options, 1 to 2. If it's literally, if I have only hour chunks, I'll give the 3 hours. Or if I see a nice chunky time, because I'm trying to get them to figure out so I'll give them 2 to 5 on Tuesday. I'm open, or all Tuesday afternoon, or whatever. So that's a good one as well. And then start that email. Go quickly. Again, try to get the right people to see their visibility inside.
And to move this kind of along, I see your list here. As you're scheduling, once you do schedule and you send out your meeting invite.
So what to put in your meeting invite?
Yeah, from your calendar of choice. Here at Arkus, I think we're one of 10 people who send out invites from the actual Salesforce.com calendar.
Crazy like that.
Syncing with the Google Calendar, so you could send it out from the Google Calendar if you'd like. But it's a good practice to put the agenda of the meeting in the meeting invite.
Yeah, I'm just going to say that again so everybody understands. Well, first of all, title. Subject of it should be meaningful. And if we're scheduling it, we put the subject of our client in it. And I've always struggled, like, should I put me? But then if I look at my calendar, it's Arkus, so it doesn't make any sense. So if I'm scheduling it, I'm putting your company name in there. So it shows up on your calendar with your company name. I still haven't found a perfect thing for that, because I could put both, but that seems kind of strange. And then I generally put what it is. Is it training? Is it check-in? Is it project status? I'll put it in the subject line. And then the first thing, and everybody should do this for every meeting, no meeting request should come out, and I actually wrote about this in depth in the blog post. Every meeting should have an agenda. And you're going to say, what? Like, why should I have an agenda if I'm just having a one-on-one? Here's what, and I thought about this as I was writing it. Your agenda should be as big and should follow suit to how many people are in the meeting. If you and I are meeting, a one-liner. We're meeting to talk about blah. Fine. 2 people, maybe I throw two. It's a one-liner. 5 people, I'm going to write out a couple little things, right? We're going to put a couple little bullet points. We're going to talk about this, this, and this. 20 people, now I'm talking, I think this should have a formal agenda, right? It should really outline, because just think about it. The more people, the more chances of there being misunderstanding of what they're there for.
Also the type of meeting. It might be a one-person meeting, but it could be a training session. So if it's a training session, your agenda might be training.
Right.
But there's likely an accompanying document that goes along with it. Here's the training agenda.
Right.
So the agenda for the meeting is training. The training itself has an agenda.
Right.
So making sure that people, when you're scheduling meetings, if there is supporting documentation or supporting materials, it doesn't have to be documentation, just anything that people should have access to during the meeting or should have reviewed prior to the meeting, make sure that you've given them ample time to do such things.
Right. I would say there's almost no scenario where I want to get that document in the meeting. I always want to get it before.
Because, you'd be like, oh, on page 6 of the document, you're like, meeting just started. I'm still on page 1. I just started reading it.
And if you're sending out...
Now my attention's on this document and not what you're talking about. And if the whole purpose was to just read this document, I could have read it.
Right. You could have sent it to me, I'll read it and send my notes back. I would say also, again, that same thing. If it's a big document, give them more time. If it's a small document, give them then it can be reviewed quickly. Ask yourself, do I need a meeting to do this? Can I just send them a document and say, let's call if you have any questions? But especially with things that need to be reviewed, mention that they need to be reviewed. Say, we are going to go over this. Please review the document. Like, make it very clear what you're asking of the people. Because again, you're, in sending a meeting request, you're really you're taking something from them. So, they might want the meeting or not want the meeting, but you should always be considering that I'm taking your time. I want to take the least amount of time and I want to make your time the most productive it possibly can be for that time that I'm taking. So give them all the things you can. So a good subject line, a great agenda. And again, my basics is basically 3 bullet points. And I put in 3 bullet points to say, here's what we're going to be talking about. Because most times people know what we're kind of going to be talking about, but this just gives us a little thing to sort of go back to, and we'll talk about that in running the meeting. But go back to it, say, hey, this is what we're trying to get out of this meeting. And then always, always, always include the information. This seems obvious, but include the information of how to get into the meeting. Don't forward it or whatever if you don't have. It should have the dial-in. It should have the GoToMeeting link. It should have the WebEx link. Everything that's needed should be in the meeting request. Don't make me go to another email where you sent me the password. Don't make me go to another place where you changed the dial-in. Make sure it is all in the same place so I can get to it.
We've kind of been talking about this, but we've done it as it goes without saying, but it should not go without saying that every meeting should have a meeting request. It happens where sometimes you're emailing back and forth and it's like, yeah, 11:30 works for me. Okay.
Right.
And then it's like someone's got to send out the meeting request. So if it's you who, started that conversation and said we should meet, does 11:30 work for you? And they say yes, send out a meeting invite.
Right.
If you're on the other end of it and someone asks you, hey, we need to get together, can you get together at 11:30? Say, yeah, sure. Can you send out the meeting invite? Or sure, I will send out the meeting invite. Right. Someone needs to send it out though, because you can't rely on people to just then put it on their own calendar and know what the dial-in is, or am I calling you or are you calling me? I mean, that's one of my least favorite things when someone's just like, where can I reach you? My phone number, it's in my email signature. That's where you can reach me. You can also reach me via email. You can reach me any number of ways. Okay, let's do 3:30. Fine. You just asked me where you can are you gonna send out an invite? I'll accept it. What do you want to do?
I find that I end every time. So when I'm scheduling with somebody, I say I will shoot them the times, and then I'll ask the question. I'll say, do these times work for you? Let me know, and I will send out the invite. So I let them know that all they need to do, because again, if I'm trying to make it easy for them, which we're trying to make it easy for our clients mostly, I say I'm trying to make it the easiest. I'm giving you times, and I'm telling you, if you say yes, 2 p.m., that means the next thing you should hear from me or see from me is a meeting invite. And if I don't know you, meaning I don't know your systems and I've never had a meeting with you, I will then follow up on that email and say, invite on its way, or invite sent. Because it happens that invites get swept into something. You don't get them, whatever. So you should be letting the person know even the invite is coming, right? Maybe it's, again, if I have 10 meetings with you and I know you always accept, fine. But I know that they don't get caught in spam. But if I don't, first couple times, I might say, hey, did you get it? Or I sent it. And then I've had clients come back and say, oh, I didn't get it. And I'll be like, oh, okay, do you check this or check that? Or, so that's also, you want to follow up to make sure they got it. Now, of course, we talked about what putting in there, putting in the dial-in information, putting in the location, putting in what you're supposed to be doing. So if it's a conference call, if it's if it's an in-person meeting, Like, put the address in there. I know it's crazy, but put the address of where everybody's supposed to be going. There's some meetings we've had in the past, and it's like, oh, it's someone's offices, but the addresses aren't attached. I know in other systems there, but put it there because that's what I'm staring at on my phone, and I want to be able to click it and open up a map so I can go figure out where it is and how to get to it. So that's all sort of the pre-stuff. I would say accepting meetings, again, some places just sort of throw it on there. It would be really helpful if everybody just accepted the meeting, even if it's just a clicking of a button, because it really tells the other side. Because how many times you start a meeting and you're like, did they accept? And then you just see that you didn't accept. It should be universally known. If you are going, accept it. If you don't go, then I don't know what you did. Did you get it? Did you not get it? Did you not accept it? So it would be nice if everybody accepted the meetings. You're giving me a look.
What do you mean? I'm not giving you any looks.
You're giving me a look. I don't accept my meetings.
Like, I don't accept my meetings?
No, you accept your meetings.
I accept that. Well, I mean, if I'm going.
I will say two bugs in Salesforce meeting requests. One is it doesn't tell you when people accept your meetings, which we've built a trigger to actually do. And the second is that you can't tentative.
No tentative.
There's no tentative in Salesforce.
There's no tentative accepting, and there's no optional invitation.
Right. The Salesforce meeting requests are
You're
very
all or nothing.
It's very all or nothing.
Because they haven't touched it in forever.
Forever. Maybe we'll have to talk about that at some future meeting.
That does need to be talked about. Put that on some agenda, because you know where I stand on it.
Yeah. No, we can't talk about it. All right, so we talked about who to invite. We talked about what to put in the meeting request. We talked about why to meet or not.
To meet or not to meet.
So let's talk about some best practices, tips and tricks. Let's talk about some.
You put this like tips and tricks. I don't even know what you mean by that.
Oh, because I use tons and tons of tips and tricks.
Tips and tricks for
on
what?
Meetings, yeah.
Like what?
Well, first of all, as we've talked about before, if you do a lot of meetings, get an expander. Get something that takes data and expands it out. So I have about 4 that I use inside of meeting requests. I have one that puts in my GoToMeeting and my GoToMeeting
Text
dial-in,
which is a former CloudFocus pick of the week.
I have one that puts in my WebEx. I have one that puts in the meeting invite thing that tells people to click on accept.
You mean like tells them how to accept a meeting because you're sending it from Salesforce?
That's correct.
You're one of 4 people in the universe.
That's right. You got to train everybody. And then I have another one that does the agenda. We'll do a little agenda. So in a meeting request, instead of writing that out or copy and paste, I literally can maybe with 4 keystrokes go and it fills out the whole thing for me.
I have the same thing. I also have the note taking ability. Same thing with the text expander. When a meeting starts here at Arkus, we document.
I wasn't even getting back to how.
Well, this is part of the tips and tricks.
There's
nowhere else to go, or is that tools that make things better?
No, we need to talk about actually holding a meeting.
Well, we haven't
what
gotten
to do.
there.
All right, well let's.
You just jumped right to tips and tricks.
I was tips and tricks of sending meeting requests and calendaring and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So what do you want to do? You want to hold a meeting?
Yeah.
Or are we
let's
holding
hold a
court
meeting
right now?
So what's the best? Give me some tips on holding a meeting. What's the
Sure.
number one thing you want to see in a meeting?
Well, not to give away any secret sauce or anything, but here at Arkus, when we hold meetings, every meeting that we have, believe it or not, is documented in a Google Doc.
Well, I'd say you skipped one for me, which would be every meeting should have a meeting leader. There is someone whose responsibility it is.
Oh, well, I didn't know we were like going in some sort of sequential order.
Yeah, the sequential order. We went from who to invite, we went to what to put in the meeting request, and now we're going into what to do in the meeting.
I'm sorry, I skipped. Okay, go
Wasn't
ahead.
on your agenda.
Whatever. I'm not in your mind.
The worst meeting on the planet are the meetings where nobody knows who's running it. And
I think we said that at the beginning.
Yeah, but
didn't we?
here's your job when you're running a meeting. Write these down. You are the person who opens up the conference bridge before the meeting starts.
Slow down. People are writing.
Writing this down. That's your job. If it's your meeting, you're opening up the conference bridge. Not at 3:02, before 3 o'clock, because people might want to jump in. You have the GoTo and the WebEx up and running before the time hits.
Little tip or trick for you.
Yep.
Don't use the same conference number or GoToMeeting invite on back-to-back. Like if you have a meeting from 3 to 3:30, and then another one from 3:30 to 4. Use a different dial-in, maybe.
Oh, I love that when you're at the end of one.
You're at the end and you're trying to hustle to like get through. You're like, oh, I got another meeting coming in 1 minute. But
Hey, this is Bob.
This is
sorry,
Sally.
Bob.
Hold on, we're just finishing up here.
I thought we were here to talk about whatever.
Hold on 1 second. So you're gonna get me this. Oh, that's no good. So that there's a tip for you. Use a different dial-in or a different whatever. GoTo allows you to schedule a bunch of recurring meetings,
but they don't go over each other. Meaning,
no, they don't, because if you'd like, you just use the phone number,
right?
So you can schedule a couple of recurring GoTo meetings,
but they're
just
separate
use
dial-ins,
the phone numbers,
right?
And they're separate dial-ins.
Yeah, that's very
Correct.
good. I would also say, the bigger, the more important meeting, especially before a meeting or after a meeting, you should give yourself time on either end. I know it's not always possible, and there's not, to have, but a good meeting has someone who, again, if you're the person who's running the meeting, you are prepared for that meeting. So, meaning you're ready to talk about it. You've reviewed documents. You've thought about stuff. You have screens open. You have documents ready. I mean, this is stuff that
questions written.
Questions written. You are ready to have the meeting. And so when the people jump on at 3:01 or whatever, and again, we're not going to say don't be late or something like that, because that seems like really obvious. But you're ready to go. And again, as you're the person who's doing the meeting, every meeting should have someone. It's their meeting, and it's their responsibility. They need to have everything up and running before the meeting starts, before anybody else gets there. They need to, and I would say, and I think a good practice, if you're the one reading it, you're introing the people into the conversation. As people bloop, bloop, your job is to
hello, who just joined?
Who they are. I get on these calls where they don't know who's running the meeting, and you hear bloop, bloop, and it's like, hey, it's Bob, or bloop, bloop, Sally's here. But you're like, someone's your job. Your job is to coordinate and herd the cats. So herd them. Say, okay, we're just waiting for whatever. You know who should be on the call. This is part of being a meeting manager. You know who should be on the call, and you know who's there, because you're kind of going, okay, well, we're still waiting for blah or blah. Do we need to wait? Whatever you're coordinating. That's the first 5 minutes of meeting, but that sets a lot of the tone. Like, if someone's good, they're running that meeting, they're coordinating the people as they come in, and they're giving them pointers and saying, okay, we're just holding on. We're waiting for this person's jumping in, whatever. And then you're also pinging. If you need to ping people to get them on, that's your job. Like, you need to go get, I didn't hear Bob's. All right, well, I'm going to go get them. So, like, it's sort of like you're kind of a herder at that point, but that's your job. That's, if you're running the meeting, you should be herding and getting people ready, especially when everybody's in multiple different places. People walking into the conference room is one thing, but if it's like all over the place, just knowing who they are, where they're dialed in from, very important thing. Next up on mine is then, I think the next thing you should do is then read through the agenda. I know it's crazy sauce, but you have no idea.
Yeah.
Again,
restate the purpose of why you are actually congregating at that very moment.
Why are we congregating?
Why are we here? Big question.
And it can be as simple as introductions to say who's here. Again, if it's obvious, it's obvious. Everybody knows who. Okay, we all know who's here. Let's get going. Or if it's not, say, hey, I'd like to take a minute and just make sure everybody knows who's on the call. Say, why are we here? What's going on? Here's what we're supposed to be doing today. And then my tip is I like to get agreement. So when I say, here's what we're supposed to be doing, now's your chance to disagree. And I say, no, we're doing this.
No.
And you say, no.
No, I want to do something different.
Right. So I reread.
I want to watch a movie.
Right. Or I also might state, like I had one today where I was on with a client and I needed to sort of retell a story of how we got here, because it had new people involved. They didn't really know what was going on.
Right.
And so
tell the tale.
Tell the tale. Here's how we got here.
Here's where we've been. Here's where we're going.
And then you already brought it up. It is already the main thing during the meeting. Again, during the meeting, you're doing stuff. You're PowerPoint presenting. You're talking about things. You're going through the agenda. You're running the time. And I would say that theory also goes with the how many people are there. The more people are in the meeting, the more you have to take care to make sure everybody's on the same page. 2 people in a meeting, hey, what are we here for? 4 people in a meeting, here's what we're quickly going to do. 10 people in a meeting, I'm going to get pretty explicit about what we're doing.
Yep.
100 people, let's lay it all out. because again, you want to get everybody, in order to make decisions and get people organized, you want to get them all on the same page. You know, Justin already said one of our things is everything's documented.
Yep. Every project has a Google Doc, and at the top of that Google Doc is a nice table of contents. I mean, again, we're not really giving away anything super secret here, but Google Docs is actually a really great place to capture notes in a meeting, because if more than one of you are in the meeting, you can both be in the doc, and you could be chatting and watching the notes being taken at that time. Again, using Text Expander is a really nice way to, you know, click a couple of keys and boom, it shoots up like a, you know, a nice title for that meeting with the date and the time, and like a little section for you to fill out who's there, and then like section headers for the meeting, agenda, questions, notes, follow-ups and takeaways.
Yeah, so
hit all the big sort of header topics there for what you should be using to prep for a meeting, right? Every meeting should have an agenda. Every meeting might have some questions that you're going to be asked. They may or may not, maybe not, but, you know, questions that you have to ask and get answered. Notes, pretty obvious. And then one of the big ones is, if, you know, you have a meeting, you should probably come away from that meeting with at least one thing you need to do, right?
Just stole it from my blog post.
Yeah, well, it's kind of ingrained in the heads, right? So if you're in a meeting, you know, maybe you're there as reference material. You yourself are reference material. So you're there for your brain.
Right.
And you're there really because you know something that everybody else doesn't. So you need to be there just to answer a bunch of questions yourself. You're not really asking anything.
It's like a deposition.
If that's how you want to think of it.
Like an IRS audit.
Sure. But a lot of the time you're in a meeting and you're talking about things that need to get done. You know, you've done stuff, you're talking about the things you've done, and then there's the next steps, the things that need to be done. So at the end, it's good to, you know, both have the meeting leader say, all right, here's the things that need to get done.
Right.
X, Y, Z, K, J, L, whatever. Here's who's going to do them. Here's when they're going to be done by. Everyone agree? Yeah? Great. Yeah. Let's get that stuff done, and then, you know, you can follow up on them.
The best meetings I've ever been at, and this is again hard because in a world where there are not a lot of people,
you
know, in the best meetings, like one of the big ones that, you know, run by project management groups, there is literally a dedicated person, almost a typist in the corner, taking notes on every single thing that's said. And you think about it, really, like the biggest, most important meetings, aka a court case, every word that's being said is taken down. There's a reason for that. So again, the bigger the meeting, the more dedicated. So like when we do bigger, more important meetings, we dedicate people to be the note takers, and their job is to take the notes.
We don't like to do that very often, but if it's necessary, we do it.
Right. If we feel there's good value, something's gonna be lost. So as the meeting person, your job is sort of to be running the meeting and also taking what people are saying.
And typically that happens during like a discovery session or a detailed requirements type of meeting where there's a lot of, as the meeting leader, there's a lot of thinking and reacting that you need to be doing and sort of leading people down a path. And while they're talking back at you, you don't really you want to be like really listening, as opposed to listening and typing what they're saying, because it's very important what they're saying. You need to have that stuff captured, but it's also really important to comprehend and listen very carefully so that you can respond appropriately and move down the path.
I don't care who you are, but that ability to both listen and take in and comprehend and then back out and type down exactly what they're saying, I have not found anybody who can do it.
Very difficult.
So you either can do it because you slow down and you say, wait, I'm going to take this down. Like, well, I'm on with one client, I'm talking to somebody, I'll be like, I do it as a way of repeating back to them. I'll say, Jason, to do this. And then as I'm telling them that, because I'm saying it as I type it, so then they know, and I go, Sally, to do this, and I'm typing it in my notes. Like, these are the things that I'm doing.
Yep. I do the same thing. I just start talking slowly about what I'm saying is what I'm typing.
Right. I'm trying to get it onto a piece of paper. I'm trying to get it written down. I'm trying to make sure that it's documented. And again, this comes to, I would say this is the third thing that's really about the size and people of the meeting. The more people who are in a meeting, the more you need to be documenting, and the more important it is to capture what's going on. The less is probably less. So, big important meetings that are, incredibly important, you better be really thinking about that and capturing and letting people, look at their tasks and whatever. And then I would say the follow-up, right? So every meeting should end with some sort of thing either said on the meeting, like you're going to do this, you're going to do this, or in great examples, and again, not always needed, but needed sometimes, here's the email to everybody who got off this call with what's supposed to be done. So, Sally, you said you were going to do this, Bob, you said you're going to do this, and here's the timeline of what I was saying to do it. That's a way to really push forward stuff. And then wow, we had a great meeting, we talked about a bunch of stuff, and we divvied up the stuff that we do after the meeting, which is actually where you work. Because no one does any work in meetings. You just discuss stuff, and then you come away from it. And if you think about that, and that helps in sort of like, okay, so I'm only meeting to sort of go over stuff and decide next steps and next actions, and now I'm doing that stuff afterwards. So we better be very clear where it's going. And if you know people are bad at it, you got to be good at it. If you know people are good at taking down their tasks, and different clients, different people, I trust some better to know what they're supposed to be doing, and others I know that they don't really pay attention and write it down, and so I'll do it for them. Really important stuff. What else?
Well, I think we're at the point where we can talk about either you have a stance on standing.
Good one.
Thank you. Standing versus ad hoc meetings.
Yep.
I'm reading ahead in your blog post. I've already read your blog post that nobody else has read, which is nice.
It'll be up next week on blog.arkusinc.com.
Exactly. You kind of make a very bold statement in saying that standing meetings are generally a waste of time.
You want me to defend?
You don't have to defend your own statement. I mean, maybe you do.
I think I do.
I have standing meetings, and I don't feel like they're a waste of time. I'll say that you say that as a broad stroke general statement,
yes,
when in actuality it's not true as a broad stroke statement. It's true in some cases and untrue in others because, as I'm sure a bunch of our listeners who are Salesforce folks, and if they're still listening at this point, are agile developers and follow a Scrum methodology. They're doing a stand-up every day.
Right.
And that's a standing meeting, and they're doing it.
Well, it's a standing meeting for two reasons. In true Scrum, a standing meeting is both a meeting that happens every morning and also a meeting where everybody is standing up.
Sure.
It is actually meant to do both. And the reason it is a standing meeting and a standing meeting is actually to keep it short.
Right.
Right. And it is very purposeful. And it is actually the only meeting, roughly, of those developers' day. That's their meeting of the day. They get up, they talk about, and this is in true agile methodology, they get up, they talk about three things they did yesterday, three things they did today, and their problems and any obstacles in their way. They bring it to the Scrum Master. Scrum Master then takes it and does it, and then they go to work, and they spend the next 8.5 hours doing work. So while you can say that's a good example of why you should have a standing meeting, yes. So if you're only going to have one meeting a day and it's 15 minutes, go ahead, have your one standing meeting. But that's not the reality. Here's my theory on standing meetings, and I'm gonna give and I will defend myself. And I know you do them, and that's fine. And I know you do them on projects, and that's fine. And some people have them as a way. But here's why I think that they're not as effective as we think they are. It is human nature for people to do things when they're due, meaning you do work when it's to be done. People generally don't do work in advance. When you go to college, you're taught for your entire career before you get into the work world. It's due on this day, and I think you were talking about this morning.
I was.
You do it the day before it's due, or the weekend before it's due, or whatever. People aren't very good naturally of being proactive and doing things in advance. So what I think the problem with standing meetings is standing meetings create a sort of chunking up of something that doesn't need to flow at that chunk. So, an example, and I've seen this many times, it's like, I want to have a standing meeting every week about this project. And I have watched many, many people then use that as the reason to not do something until the meeting. So they'll say, well, I need to get some information before I can do the next step. I'll wait to the meeting. So now, no matter what, whenever that next meeting is, that person is going to wait. Not do what they could do to further the project. They're going to wait until that time. Whereas it becomes a crutch where they could have answered the question, they could have gotten the document, they could have done whatever it is to move forward, as opposed to waiting to that meeting. So people naturally kind of go, oh, I'll wait till Tuesday and we'll talk about it on the Tuesday call. If it's important, it shouldn't wait till Tuesday. It should go ahead of Tuesday.
And that's all well and good.
Right.
And I think that what you are leaving out when you're saying that standing meetings are a waste of time is the fact
I didn't
that...
actually say that, but okay.
Well, I think you did.
I did not.
I can read it if you'd like.
I said generally.
Generally a waste of time, and only do the reverse, which is to slow things down.
Yep.
Now, that's only if you're only having standing meetings.
That's true.
If you're having a standing meeting because you want to have a standing meeting as a level setter and as a once a week, let's get more than one party together to just level set and let everyone know where you're at, that's a good thing. That doesn't preclude you from having other meetings throughout the week if you need to have other meetings during the week. If we need to talk about something, let's talk about it. They can be ad hoc. They can be a phone call. Phone call is kind of in this case is kind of like a meeting, right?
Well, it's
a
15-minute
communication. So are these standing meetings. I'm not going to argue
people
with you
wait
about
for
them. Well,
that's the problem. I will talk to you on Thursday, so let's wait to talk about it then.
Do you wait for them?
Huh?
Do you wait for them? Knowing that
I don't have any.
You don't have any standing meetings.
No.
You just won't accept them. You'll be like, no, I will not accept
I actually
this.
have one, but I watched it. Here's another example.
No. Answer the question.
What?
Do you have a standing meeting at all, ever?
No.
So
I do
people
not
try and schedule them with you, and you say no.
I say no.
Really?
I do.
Okay.
I get on calls and I tell people that I think standing meetings. And I'm going to give you another example, which I think you're going to like. And I actually made this in the blog post as well. Standing meetings are also scheduled at a certain interval, right? So let's meet weekly. Let's meet monthly. Let's meet yearly. Let's meet every day. I think the problem with that, too, is it doesn't naturally go with the urgency of what's going on. So when you do the standing meeting for the next 6 months and you put it in your calendar to meet every week, fine. At that point, maybe for the first 2 weeks, talking weekly was an important thing to do. But then as you get on in the project, where maybe there's a big development cycle or maybe there's something else, the meetings don't need to take place. They're not at the right schedule. They should be either faster or they should really slow down to be once every month or so. So I feel like standing meetings also create a level of friction and noise that slow down or artificially speed up or make, connections to things that don't need to be done. Again, I think this day and age, I wish there was no ability to put a repeating project on or repeating meeting requests on someone's calendar, because I feel like it gets abused and it creates a situation where people are waiting for or just kind of going through the motions of, as opposed to all the stuff we said before. So here's my example as well. If we talked about having a great agenda and requiring the right people on the call for the right meeting, right? If that's all so important, that gets all blown away in a standing meeting, because a standing meeting has the same agenda that it's had for the last 6 months. It has the same people it's had for the last 6 months, and really no one's reviewing or getting ready for that. It's the same one. It becomes noise.
I think you've just had some bad experiences with these.
No, I've been in the business for so long. I've had great experiences with them. I've learned to not use them. I've learned to be much more effective without them. I've learned to refute them, because I see what they do. They create noise. They create friction. It's artificial. It's artificial to say we should meet. We're going on a 7-day calendar and saying we should meet every Tuesday. Why? There's nothing that's happening that you need. If the work needs to get done before, get it done before. If it needs to be whatever, let's meet when we need to meet. So again, I think if you go back to what we just said, what makes meetings great? Paying attention, great agenda, great setup, all that. A standing meeting is the opposite of all that. It's just a piece of noise that sits on your calendar that no one's paying attention to, that no one's doing a great agenda on, that no one's even updating or giving any new information to. I know standing meetings don't get a brand new agenda every week with what's going to be talked about. I know that people don't go into the standing meeting every week and take and remove people who could or could not be there or who should or not be there. It's a generic thing that just goes on forever. So that's why I don't like them. I'm not saying there's no use for them, and I'm not saying, but I feel like people use standing meetings as an artificial way to get people to pay attention. And if that's what you're doing, you're artificially getting people to pay attention at a certain time, then I ask, well, let's talk big picture here. Why are you artificially getting them to pay attention? Oh, because it's on their calendar. So now I've got to pay attention to that project. Well, then now let's talk about why you're doing the project. Because if you're not doing the project because you artificially have to be told to pay attention to it once a week or once a month, something's wrong. I think it's a pretty good point.
It's fair, but it's also at the same time it's unfair because I think you're discounting people who do standing meetings well. Because there are people who do standing meetings well.
I'm
and
not
with
saying
good
it's.
purpose.
I'm not making a. I'm doing it as a point of sort of contention to sort of make people think about it, right? I'm saying there are useless meetings, waste of time. There are obviously good instances for them, but I think that they are overused. I think they are a bad management technique, and I think that they're in the right scenario, absolutely. But I think they're overused, and I don't think that people really think through. If we're true to what we're saying about what makes a meeting good, I think standing meetings butt up against a lot of the things that we just said that make a really good meeting. So the care and feeding and organization and agenda and understanding and review, standing meetings start to turn into this just thing that just happens without all that other good stuff. And so that's why I don't do them. Because I rather say, let's meet at the time and at the place. It's also what we talked about. I didn't actually talk about this at the beginning, about the size of a meeting. The default for putting a meeting in your calendar is an hour. That is, whoever did that, whatever developer did that, should be taken out behind whatever and spanked with a wet noodle. Because why an hour? Like, why not 0? I want every meeting to have a 0 time to start.
What? I mean, well, we use Salesforce, but
What's that? It's just default.
yeah, but that's Salesforce.
Every calendar in the world.
That's not true at all.
Yeah? Pretty sure every calendar defaults to an hour.
Well, when I go to create something in my iCal, I just go to it and drag the amount of time I want.
No, but
boom,
if you double click, it will always just put the default for a meeting is an hour. I just did it in.
Yeah, but I just drag. I want to go from this time to this time.
But I'm saying the default, if you just double click on it on a day, I'm doing this right now. If I'm just anywhere and I go double click, it's just an hour. It boots to an hour. That's what it does.
I mean, I don't know. I guess I create meetings in a different way. Like I don't just double click.
But I'm saying if you add an event, just clicking on it or adding it or clicking new event in Salesforce, it's an hour. It's always an hour.
Yeah. Okay.
So what I'm saying is that whoever did that made the choice that everything in our life is broken down to an hour-long chunk.
Well, you can't get enough words in half an hour.
So what I would suggest that
that seems right to me.
No, I think what's right is that every meeting should be for the length that it is. I think people actually put hour-long meetings where they don't need to be an hour. They put out 3-hour meetings where they don't need that. Sometimes they put an hour-long meeting when it should be an hour and a half. If we were saying that every meeting should be really thought about and intrinsically, brought and considered and have all the care and loving that we've talked about, then an hour is just a generic point of time. And then we should have said, no. I mean, granted, there's a calendar thing and 45 minutes, 30 minutes. I'm not saying we should have a 33-minute meeting, but I think people should really think about, does this really need to be an hour? Could it be done in 15 minutes? Could it be done in half an hour? Do we need to have an hour-long discussion of this? Maybe it needs to be an hour and a half. And so there's my other point about standing meetings. Standing meetings are always for the same amount of time, no matter what the context of it is, right? It could be the biggest critical piece in the project, but it's still the standing meeting that's an hour to go over it. Yeah. Or it could be the time we just jump on for 5 minutes. Well, then it doesn't need to be a meeting. So again, I think it rails in the face or of everything we say that what makes a good meeting, a standing meeting goes against it. And that's why. And I make a good point.
Yeah, but I still don't think that standing meetings are the root of all evil, meaning that they should not ever exist ever in life.
No, they should be avoided.
Because I happen to be a part of 2 projects that have standing meetings.
That's their choice.
I will say,
so your choice or their choice?
Their choice.
Okay,
both
that's,
cases.
Me too. I'm in one. I lied before.
You did lie. I knew you were in one.
I'm in one that it was their choice, and I fought against it.
Fine, but with the same respect, do you not prepare for that meeting? Do you not go to that meeting with? Do you wait until that meeting to do your work, or do you do the work when you need to do the work?
No,
so it doesn't stop you.
But the whole point
of
it
is
that
you're just like the greatest and you handle it the best. Is that it?
No, I'm saying that I understand in my experience of being in this industry for very long that all the reasons that I'm saying that standing meetings are bad, that those standing meetings all reflect that. Meaning that one meeting, whatever, but I have seen that meeting also has a period of time, and it's sometimes not enough.
No,
so it doesn't
I
get
agree.
changed.
I
see people show up.
I have 2 standing meetings.
Yep.
One of which is very well thought out. An agenda goes out the day before with an update with very clear list of here's the thing. It's kind of like a status report meeting, right? Where instead of sending out a status report on, at the end of the week, it's let's have this meeting to do the status, right? And here's the things. Here's what we're going to talk about this week. Here's what I delivered over the last week. We've done all this stuff. I haven't waited till today. You've seen it throughout the week. But here's a level setter, right? Here's a time to just go over it.
But why do it once a week? Why not do it whenever you need to level set?
That stuff happens ad hoc.
But you're artificially limiting yourself.
Let me tell you why.
Okay.
Because in this particular instance, in both instances, and I think in your instance as well, it's not you and a client. It's you, a client, and another vendor, or maybe another vendor, or maybe another vendor.
Yeah.
In my case, one of my standing meetings is me, our client, and 2 other vendors. So It's our client and 3 other vendors with a set time where we can all get together and talk about stuff. In the other case, it's me, our client, and another vendor. So again, 3 different parties.
Yeah.
And I know that we're going back and forth during the week with the client. I know the client's going back and forth with their other vendors during the week.
Mm-hmm.
I'm copied on some of this stuff that's relevant to me. I'm not on other things. This is a time where we can all get together and say, okay, the stuff that is overlapping that maybe we haven't talked about because, we haven't talked about it.
Why?
We haven't talked about it.
Why?
Because it's work that they're doing.
Because we're waiting for our meeting to talk about it?
Maybe. Maybe not.
Maybe
it's stuck in some project management thing
Bingo.
Somewhere.
You just hit it. You're saying you're waiting to talk about something. I get the idea. Listen, the reason standing meetings happen is because people then say that piece of time is carved out, and because I'm so busy and that I have no other time on the planet, that I know that at least on that half an hour once a week, I will be able to put my 30 minutes of attention towards that thing. But just as me saying that, you can see there's a problem. And the problem really isn't being solved by a standing meeting. The problem is time and attention. The problem is where is it? And you don't need to have a thing blocked on your calendar every week to make you do something, to make you have attention towards something.
Will you agree that there is a time and a place for a standing meeting?
I think they're so rare.
But there is a time and a place for a standing meeting. I can give you an example.
Give me another
if you'd
one.
Like.
Yeah. Let's see if I can refute it.
Production issue.
Oh, like there's a production issue, and you literally then say we're gonna meet every morning until it's over.
Every single day until this production issue is done.
Absolutely, that is actually a very good example of a standing meeting. But that's not a long-term standing meeting.
Agreed. Hopefully it's over in 3 days or 2 days or 1 day.
And by the way, I'm the one who came up with and have propagated that.
You came up with that?
I have propagated that is because it is a way to get people that are not on their job to get on their job. The reason that we usually do that, and we have done it with some vendors, is because they're not doing good. They're not paying attention. They're not responding.
So there is a time and a place for
But that's literally just to make them respond and to be accountable.
Fair enough.
But it's a trick. It shouldn't have to be. You shouldn't have to use a standing
but
call.
Not
to
everybody
get to pay
has
attention.
the same. Not everyone's on the same wavelength. Not everyone's got the same time and attention or attention to detail or even drive to do stuff if they're not pushed by certain motivations. And that's okay.
But you're saying it's not because the standing meeting needs to happen. It's because people
people.
don't do work until they have a meeting to prove to show up and sit there.
But that's life, man. That's people.
No, but it's not. But I'm saying it's not good. It's not good.
It's not good, but it happens.
Right,
just because
something
isn't good doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
I can solve for that in many different ways, and standing meeting is. And again, we're doing that because we, as Arkus or as employees of Arkus, are doing it as a way to force the issue with somebody else. So we can't control them. So what we do is we throw this thing out there that says, we're at least going to make sure you're paying attention for this period of time. So that's sort of saying that's because we can't control the outcome, right? It makes sense to do it then, and it's a very good, but that's usually a last resort, by the way. We don't do that. That's not the first resort. That's the last resort. And it is a trick. It is a trick of human nature to get them on the call, to get them accountable for what they're doing or saying or whatever. It's not what I would suggest, and I don't think it doesn't make it actually says that why standing meetings are no good, because it then makes them talk about it, right? Talk about something. So anyway, my blog post that
spent 15 minutes
that
on
no one's
meetings.
gonna listen. It's something very important. I think people should hear about it and hear
they have,
and they've heard my opinion.
Heard all about it.
Tweet me at just Edelstein. No, I'd love to hear from people about what they think about my opinion on standing meetings.
I'm sure you'll get a couple.
I'm sure I will. At Jason M. Atwood. All right, let's wrap it up. Anything else? Last things on meetings?
I mean,
we
just
really
looking
riffed.
at our agenda here. We did our agenda in a Google Doc, which is one of our tools that make meetings better. We already talked about Google Docs being a tool that has really revolutionized for us the way that meetings. For us, it started with the Wave throwback.
Yep.
Where Wave was just like, love the Wave drinking game. Where the Google Wave was like revolutionary in the way that you can collaborate in real time with one another in a meeting context.
Right.
And Docs has taken pretty much all of the things that Wave did and now has added on top of that even more stuff.
So what's some
other tools
our tools?
Yeah,
so we use Salesforce for meeting requests.
Salesforce.com for meeting requests, which syncs to our Google Calendar, which syncs down to our iCal via the Apereo Google Sync, which
that's correct.
Could use Cirrus or Google or Apereo, one or the other, whatever you feel like using. If you're using Google in the back end, or if you're using Outlook, you can use the native Salesforce Outlook connector if you'd like. I prefer GoToMeeting. You, I think, prefer WebEx, but for the most part, we use one of those two tools to provide both telephony for conference calling as well as screen sharing. Because, I mean, I always use GoTo and not just send out the dial-in part. I always send out the entire thing, and I put in the meeting request. You can join the GoTo or not, but you can just use the dial-in.
Right.
And then while we're in the meeting, it's so much easier to just already be in the GoTo and say, let's just look at that.
Right.
And that's the stuff that was missing years and years ago. Even like 7 years ago or 8 years ago, when you started getting that stuff, WebEx early on, Live Office, was it Microsoft Live Office or something?
Yeah, it's the one they bought,
right?
right?
It was terrible. It had that meeting room and the whiteboard, which is a little wonky. But I prefer GoToMeeting. I think you prefer WebEx, but are coming around to GoToMeeting.
No, I actually use both. And so the one feature that GoToMeeting has that I absolutely love and now use it all the time, but people don't know I use it, and I've even done both. I've used GoToMeeting for the dial-in and WebEx for the conference for the sharing. is that GoToMeeting has the ability to have basically a conference line, a dedicated conference line.
Right.
You set up basically a reoccurring meeting every day. Oh, there's my standing meeting.
It's not even every day. When you click the checkbox that it's recurring, it's just that's
Right.
it. There's no start date. There's no end date. It just goes.
So you just create
the conference
one.
line's
It's
open.
and then it's an open line that people can join. No one has to start it. No, it's just if two people go in, it's started.
Right.
And it's a conference line and it's dedicated. So what I have done, and again, my tips and tricks is that is a text expander for me. And so I type in GTM or whatever, and it pops this thing. And not only that, I've now learned and put in mind a mobile link, which I'm trying to get everybody at Arkus here to do, which allows from any mobile phone, if you see it in your calendar, you can click on it and it'll dial you directly in, including all the digits and whatever, because it just makes people's lives easier. I've heard clients actually say, oh, I really like that because it makes my life easier. So I do that for dial-in. If I'm just doing WebEx, I'll do WebEx. The problem with WebEx is that the dial-in for every call is different.
Right.
So when you send out the WebEx request, I now put dial-in available when you log in, because you log in, then you have to do the dial-in.
Right.
And then it locks you to your voice so I can see who's talking, which is a nice feature.
Right.
GoTo does that too.
Yes.
But they have to hit the number.
Right. When they dial in, they have a code that says that they are who they say they are.
Right. But if you're sending out a standardized one, everybody doesn't have the same number.
Right.
Everybody would have the same number, and it wouldn't work.
Well, no, nobody knows their number if you're only sending them the phone number.
That's
you have
right.
to send them the full GoToMeeting request.
So we use GoToMeeting and WebEx.
Yep. For
just
screen
a
sharing
ton.
all the time.
And then document, you use, and I use sometimes Mobile Day, which
Yes.
is a
I like
iPhone
Mobile
app
Day.
that reads through your calendar and makes non-clickable meeting room numbers clickable, so you can just dial
it
right
understands the dial-ins and understands how to dial you into a conference line.
in. Yeah, a few times it's failed on me and it pissed me off, but we use that. That's really it. I mean, I was thinking like iCal. I use iCal for my calendaring on my desktop. It syncs with everything. We've talked about the family calendar. I mean, we talked about that when I wrote the blog
that
post.
doesn't really have much to do with.
Well, I think the thing that happened for me whenever I left the big corporation and I got to consolidate my life is that I've realized that my calendar is not just work. It is a combination of a lot of things. And I want to have one view. It's the thing I missed when I worked at that big company. I want to have one view of everything, right? We've come from a world 20 years ago where you were from 8 in the morning till 5 at night, you were at work. So you would just schedule things. But that's not our world anymore. Our world is like so fluid that I want to be able to overlay my tasks or my calendar, my family calendar, my Arkus calendar all in one so I can judge what's going to happen and then plan my days accordingly. The other tip that, huge tip, but, is sort of, I'll take it away from the week review thing and just make it, is the reviewing of your calendar. Like going ahead a week at a time, like on a Friday, and just going, hey, what's coming up, and being able to prepare for it, see if things need to move or not. That is huge, huge, huge for me. I'm trying to think else. What else? We don't use any tools?
No, I think you about covered it for meetings. I can't think of another tool that we really use.
I know. I tried to
from like a whiteboard when we go or have people over into our conference room or go to someone else's office.
No, it's all the built-in stuff, and we use Google Apps for calendaring, sort of the middle of the calendaring piece.
What we said, we use Google Calendar.
Yeah, I mean, I don't use it, but I use it.
Right,
it's kind of in the middle. It's kind of like Gmail.
Comes with the package.
It's like the data's going through it, but I'm not using the interface to it ever.
Yeah, I mean, actually, you really never use it for anything. So
no, it's just sort of a data repository.
Yeah.
All right.
Although I do know that I do need, for certain people, I need to send them the invite via Google Calendar, or else they'll never show up to the meeting.
So at that point, you put it in Salesforce. Do you put it? Which way do you do it?
I go into Google. I create the invite in Google Calendar. I then come back into Salesforce, manually sync it at that very moment because I'll forget about it later, and then tie everything together.
I think
I just know they won't accept.
Right.
I just know, like, if I send them the Salesforce, I was gonna say another S word, the Salesforce calendar invite, they're either gonna accept it and not get it onto their calendar, or they're just gonna look at it and be like,
right,
what is this? So
What is this?
What is this thing?
All right. Well, let's say so that's our meetings episode. Tell us if you liked it. It was certainly a long one. Next week,
I've been giving you the wrap it up signal for like 15
and I'm not paying attention to you because my calendar says we're supposed to be podcasting right now.
That's true.
Until
So
6 o'clock.
So does mine.
Yeah.
Well, not till 6.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's in my calendar, hard landscape. So obviously there's big news about Salesforce and Oracle and all this news that came out. We're not ignoring that.
Yeah.
We
know about it.
We'll
We've
know
read
about
it.
We'll let it all. We'll let it all settle.
We're gonna let it marinate.
Marinate in the mind grapes.
That's right.
And then we'll come back to it next week and we'll talk about that.
I can't believe you just used mind grapes.
Mind grapes. Why not?
So I was just telling you about my mind grapes yesterday.
I know
and
you
were
were
like, "Ooh, mind grapes! I'm gonna start using
Yeah,
that."
it came right up. So,
Tracy
but
Jordan.
we do have a CloudFocus app pick of the week.
We do. So
let's do it.
mine's a kind of an expensive one, and it's a piece of hardware.
So I did to you the thing that I don't want you to do to me, but I did to you anyway.
What'd you do to me?
I saw this on the agenda and I went and looked at it because I'm like, "Ooh, what's this?"
Cool, yeah?
It looks pretty cool.
Yeah. So I was at a concert festival this past weekend.
I was trying to figure out why you picked this.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was this past weekend, Friday through Sunday, up in North Adams, Massachusetts.
What was the festival?
It's the Wilco Solid Sound Festival at Mass MoCA. They do this every year.
All right.
And Wilco are great. I'm gonna get some comments about Wilco in the tweets.
At
Anyway,
Just Edelstein.
so it's all day.
Yeah.
And
all day, baby.
Saturday, it's the long day. So like it opens up at like 11:30, and Wilco is playing until like 11:30 or 12 that night. So you're there for 12 hours. It's also took me about an hour to get there from where I was driving from.
Right.
Your phone is not going to make it because you're taking pictures, you're Instagramming, you're tweeting, you're doing this.
You're doing all the things that really enjoying music is about.
Well,
tweeting and Instagramming.
you're taking little videos of stuff and posting it out there. You're doing
Vine,
stuff, right?
Really.
Well, Instagram now with their new video stuff.
Yeah, well, Twitter has Vine.
Twitter has Vine, and Facebook has Instagram videos. There's all sorts of stuff going on. We can talk about that next week. So anyway, I get food at one of the food trucks that they've got going on there, and I sit down at a picnic table, and this guy's setting up this thing, this like tower that has all these dongles sticking out of the back of it, and I'm like, "Whoa, is that a charger?" He goes, "Yeah." I'm like, I could just plug in my phone, it'll charge? He's like, "Yep, it's just this freestanding thing that's just sitting there."
Yep.
So I'm like, "Oh, that's pretty cool. It kind of looks like a canister."
Yeah.
And then he made it even cooler. He plugged a solar panel into it.
I saw that. Dude.
And I was like, "What did you just do?" He's like, "Well, once it's fully charged, it'll charge phones for like 4 days."
Yeah.
You plug this solar panel into it, it'll just keep, renewable, whatever, resources, energy, whatever. It just keeps sort of charging itself, and then it can charge. I mean, this dongle he had plugged into the back of it had a plug for like every single device that you could ever imagine.
So it wasn't a USB plug-in, or was it?
It was anything it was, one end was USB. The other end had about 14 different things on the
you
end
could have
of it.
just walked up, put lightning into the USB straight out.
Just could have plugged right in with my USB
Right.
iPhone 5 lightning
So tell us
cable.
what it is.
It's a charger. It's called the Escape 150 Power Pack by Goal Zero.
Yep.
So you can go to goalzero.com and check it out. It's $159. So if you're a camper, if you're someone who like does stuff in the great outdoors, if you live in a flood zone and want something to that'll charge things, I mean, this company, you go on their website, they make things that are, I mean, this thing's $159. They make things that are $2,000, like backup generators for your house.
Yeah.
All with this solar stuff going on. I thought it was really cool. That's kind of like the theme of the whole festival is very like crunchy and like hippie-ish. So they had these solar panel charger things for your iPhone 5, which was kind of ridiculous.
Right.
But
there's no waste that gets made in making an iPhone 5.
I mean, they had some ridiculous things there. They were serving. You'd go to like a food vendor and you'd want a bottle of water.
Yeah.
You wouldn't get a bottle of water. You get a box of water, and it said boxed water is better. on the box, like a carton.
Yeah.
Because
like
it's
a milk
like
carton.
easier to, you can ship more of it because
Yep.
it's flat as it ships.
Right.
It's biodegradable and this, that, and the other. I was like, oh man, look at this place.
I used to, there's a winemaker that makes boxed wine that's like
There's
called
lots of them.
Bandit, and we used to love it. We say Bandit. We get the Bandit because it wasn't a bottle of wine. It was a small cylinder bottle, but it was good. It was good Pinot. Just saying,
Good box wine.
good box wine.
Good
That's
box.
your pick. Now you said
That's
it's
my pick.
$150. I did look it up, and the solar thing for it.
Yeah. Then there's the 159s for the thing itself that you can charge with, by plugging it into a wall.
Right.
The solar accessory, I think, is another $150
Is
or
it?
so.
It's something. Yeah.
That basically makes it like, all right, if I'm going camping or I'm really preparing for a storm or
Right.
Sandy comes to mind here in the Northeast, it's one of those things that maybe this might be worth it to have.
Yeah, I mean it's.
I was just
I think
intrigued
you can
by
plug
the
in
whole
more.
thing.
I think I read you can plug in more. You can plug in like regular phone jacks, like
You can
220 or
plug
110 volt.
plug things right into it.
Right, so it's
with
not
regular
just
jacks.
a USB thing. It can
That's
also
right.
do.
It's a power source.
You can plug in your computer.
Yeah, it's a super power source.
Right. Huh?
Nothing. I mouthed something to
Oh,
you,
well,
which
that
I
can't-
shouldn't have mouthed.
yeah,
I
you
should have typed.
Yeah. All right. That's good. Good job, buddy.
Sorry about that.
So good one. I actually looked at it. I thought it was great. I mean, I have one that you gave me for the holidays.
I gave you one that you crank.
Yes, and then the other business partner gave me one that's a battery that I've used a couple times pretty successfully. I don't know what its limits are, but I've recharged my iPad, iPhone, and then iPod Touch over one night, and I did all those three, and it was still hanging in there. I was like, okay. So like so it's nice. Like you put that when you go on vacation, it just gives you another kind of like if something happens. But this one's definitely not like a vacation thing. This is like a home camping
this is
thing.
like a home or you're going camping. It's part of like your repertoire.
Right. Cool.
Going tailgating, whatever.
Right. Tailgate. Ooh.
Yeah.
No, I have the car.
Power stuff with
Car
it.
sitting
Whatever.
right there.
Yeah.
Whatever. All right. Well, I'm doing one that's not $150.
That's
but
good.
It's very important in the next 3
Very
days.
important.
So, as everybody in the world knows, Google Reader is going away as of July 1st, and I waited until last week to sort of make a choice and to move away. I was reading articles and like this is good, that is good, and eventually I was like, all right, I'm just gonna pick one. And I was reading about Feedly, and I'm like, all right, let me just go, let me try it. And they went from a company that used to read Google Reader, right? Read the thing, to then they switched it to now pull in and keep. So it doesn't push back to Google Reader because Google Reader will go away. Anyway, Feedly is a RSS reader, and you know what? It's really, really nice. It's very customizable. It's very clean and good looking.
Wow, this really, this is really great. I just did it
In 2 seconds.
It went from the time you started talking to now.
While you were paying attention to me in the meeting?
It just offed me right in
Yep.
and just pulled everything out of my Google Reader, and I'm assuming it's now just in my Feedly account.
Yeah, it's really well done and free. They do have ads, so just to know, they have when you're looking at like a section, it has ads.
That's
but
fine.
it does all the stuff I used to love, which is I have all the categorization. I have Jets and Cloud and Salesforce and whatever, and I can go in these categories, and you can build different views. So if you want to do like more picture views or more straight news, or it just really does a good job. It does scrolling and you're reading it. It does all the stuff that you kind of expect. It's really good. It's free. It's feedly.com, or I think cloud.feedly.com. Again, for you who are still using Google Reader, you want to stay doing reading stuff, Feedly is a good option.
Has some nice views. I like this.
Yeah, it's
Pretty
nice.
cool.
And I literally, what I did is I just replaced. I used to have one right in my bookmark bar. I just removed that one and just put this one, and I haven't looked back because I used to just intuitively go to that place to click on to get my reader news, and this one replaced it very quickly, and there you go. I'm off and running.
Very
so
cool.
Feedly.com. That's my CloudFocus app pick of the week. All right. Well, we would love to hear from you, either on the iTunes, leave a review, tweet us up at Arkus Inc. or at Jason M. Atwood or at Just Edelstein. We'll be in the Dreamforce portal. I was thinking about posting a poll in the Dreamforce portal asking if what our next big one should be. Should it be about email? Should it be about paperless? Or what's the other one? He had one other idea. Oh, getting started with GTD or weekly
The weekly
review.
review.
Maybe I'll put up a bunch, and then you guys can vote inside the Dream portal. There's a CloudFocus Weekly group in there. And you always go to blog.arkusinc.com to read my blog, which will be up next week, which we won't really talk about next week because it's really about this week's blog, but
Right.
we'll mention that it's there.
We're a
So
week behind action.
that will be up next week, or I guess it could be up sooner, but probably next week. And that's it. We're on Google Plus and the LinkedIn and the Facebook. Oh, Facebook. But in the comments on this podcast, once you find it and read it and go back to blog.arksync.com, go in the comments and using Discuss, you can sign in with any place in the world. Leave us a note. Tell us what you thought. Am I wrong? Am I wrong about standing meetings or not? Am I wrong? Am I wrong? Am I wrong? And then we'll be back next week, because it's not in our calendar now, but it will be for next week with another episode, CloudFocus Weekly. Until then, as always, enjoy those cloudy days.